Brother and I graduated from college together, but my parents only paid for my brother's tuition. He deserved it, but you didn't. My parents came to our graduation, but their faces turned pale when they saw me receiving the valedictorian award. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. I'd love it if you could share in the comments which city or country you're watching from and what time it is there now. Let's begin our story together. The scent of stale coffee and old paper was the perfume of my life. It clung to my clothes, my cramped apartment, and the perpetually tired skin under my eyes. At 2 o'clock in the morning, with the fluorescent light of my desk lamp humming a lonely tune, the world shrank to the size of a single engineering textbook, its pages a blur of equations I had to master by sunrise. This was my reality, a grueling cycle of pre-dawn classes, a full course load, and night shifts at the greasy spoon diner that left my hands smelling of fried onions no matter how hard I scrubbed them. My phone buzzed, a sharp, intrusive vibration on the scarred wood of my desk. I didn't need to look, I knew the name, Mom. A familiar weight settled in my chest, heavy and dense as a block of lead. I let it buzz a second time before swiping to answer, leaning back in my rickety chair with a sigh that seemed to pull from the soles of my feet. Jason, honey. I hope I'm not calling too late. Her voice chirped bright and breezy, a practice sound that always preceded a request. Hey, Mom. No, I'm up studying, I said, my voice rough with fatigue. Oh, you're always studying, my brilliant, hardworking boy. The praise was a spoonful of sugar meant to sweeten the medicine she was about to administer. Listen, something a little embarrassing has come up. Your father and I were looking at the budget for the month, and it seems we're a little short for the property tax installment. It's just slipped our minds with everything going on. Everything going on? I bit back the retort that wanted to leap from my throat. I knew what everything meant. Last week, it was the new set of custom-made shutters for their bedroom window. The month before, it was the weekend wine tasting tour they took in Napa. I knew this because her Facebook page was a meticulously curated gallery of their comfortable, leisurely life, a life I was subsidizing, one greasy burger at a time. A photo from just 3 days ago flashed in my mind, Mom and Dad beaming on their newly renovated stone patio, glasses of red wine held high. The caption read, "Enjoying the fruits of our labor #blessed." I had paid for the stones, the mason, and probably the wine in their glasses. How much are you short? I asked, already logging into my bank account. The numbers were grim. After my own rent and utilities, there was barely enough left for groceries and gas for my sputtering '08 Civic. It's about $600, honey. I'm so sorry to ask. I know you work so hard. $600. That was my entire food budget for the next 2 months. I looked at the 3 packs of instant ramen noodles sitting on my counter. They seemed to mock me. Okay, Mom, I heard myself say, the words tasting like ash. I'll transfer it now. Oh, you're a lifesaver, Jason. A true blessing. Your brother is lucky to have you. The mention of Ryan was a casual twist of the knife. He's so stressed with his midterms, you know how it is. We're trying to keep any financial worries off his plate so he can just focus. I knew, of course I knew. Ryan, my younger brother by 2 years, was also a college student. The difference was he lived in a spacious apartment near his campus, fully funded by our parents. They paid his tuition, his rent, his car payment. They called it investing in his potential. He was a business major, and according to them, he needed to be free to build connections and cultivate an image. My engineering degree, apparently, required no such investment. The memory of that conversation from years ago was a permanent scar. We'd sat in their pristine living room, the one with the lemon-scented polish and the family photos where everyone was smiling. Jason, you're so responsible, so good with managing things, my dad had said, his voice full of paternal pride that felt more like a verdict. You can handle working and studying, it'll build character. Ryan. He's more of an ideas guy. He needs the space to be creative without the burden of a 9 to 5. They weren't sending me to my death, they were sentencing me to a life of exhaustion, and they called it a compliment. Okay, Mom. It's sent, I said, my voice flat. Thank you, sweetie. Get some sleep. We love you. The line went dead. I stared at the screen, at the negative balance that would now follow me for the rest of the month. I didn't feel loved. I felt used. I felt like a utility, Jason the reliable son, Jason the emergency fund. The next evening at the diner, the feeling was still gnawing at me as I refilled napkin dispensers. My best friend Chloe was wiping down the counter, her expression grim. She'd been there last night, working the register when I took my mom's call. She hadn't heard the words, but she knew the script. Let me guess, she said, not looking at me. The First National Bank of Jason got another unscheduled withdrawal. I just nodded, arranging the napkins into a perfect stack. She stopped wiping and turned to face me, her green eyes sharp. Jason, this isn't normal. My parents would rather sell a kidney than ask me for $600. What they're doing. It's not what love looks like. It's just helping family, Chloe, I mumbled, the excuse sounding weak even to my own ears. No, she said, her voice firm but kind. Helping is a two-way street. This is a pipeline, and it's draining you dry. What happens when you need something? Who's bailing you out? Her question hung in the air, unanswered, because we both knew the answer, no one. I tried to shake it off, to bury myself in the familiar rhythm of work, but her words had found a crack in the wall I'd built around my resentment. For the first time, I didn't just feel tired, I felt a simmering anger, a low, dangerous heat I'd been ignoring for years. A week later, that heat flared. I was on a video call with my dad, helping him troubleshoot a printer issue over the phone. He'd shared his screen with me, a feature I'd taught him to use. As he fumbled with the settings, a notification popped up in the corner of his screen, an email. My blood ran cold. It was from Holloway and Finch Estate Law. The subject line was chillingly clear: final updates to last will and testament. My dad, oblivious, clicked it away without reading it. Stupid pop-ups, he muttered. Anyway, so you were saying I need to check the cartridge. I couldn't hear him. The world had gone silent. All I could see were those words burned onto my retinas: last will and testament. Why were they updating their will now? And why did the sight of it fill me with such a profound and terrifying dread? A cold certainty began to form in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't just about college tuition anymore. This was about everything, and I had a sickening feeling that I was about to find out exactly how little I was worth. Chloe's voice echoed in my head: this isn't what love looks like. And for the first time, I truly believed her. The dread from that email preview didn't fade. It coiled in my gut, a cold snake of suspicion that whispered to me during late-night study sessions and long shifts at the diner. It was Chloe who gave the snake its voice. A will, she'd said when I told her, her hands pausing while she stacked clean plates. People update their wills, Jason, but with everything else. It feels pointed. She was right. It felt like a final sentence being written in a judgment that had been passed on me years ago. I could no longer afford to be a passive participant in my own life. The gnawing need to know the truth became an obsession, overriding my exhaustion. So the following weekend, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove home. I have a project that requires some high-speed rendering, I told my mom on the phone, the lie tasting surprisingly easy. My laptop is too slow. Can I use Dad's desktop for a couple of days? Of course, honey. We'd love to have you, she chirped, oblivious. Date 2. My brother and I graduated from college together, but my parents only paid for my brother's tuition. He deserved it, but you didn't. My parents came to our graduation, but their faces turned pale when they saw me receiving the valedictorian award. The house felt different this time. The familiar lemon scent of Polish seemed cloying, the silence in the hallways felt heavy with unspoken things. My parents were their usual selves, bombarding me with questions about my classes, plying me with food from a fridge that was, as always, fully stocked. It was a perfect portrait of familial bliss, but now I could see the cracks in the canvas. I saw the way my father's praise was a tool to keep me compliant, the way my mother's affection was a transaction. My chance came on Saturday afternoon. My dad announced he was going to Home Depot, and my mom decided to join him. We're thinking of retiling the guest bathroom, she said brightly. You'll be okay here for a bit, sweetie? I'll be fine, I said, keeping my voice steady as my heart hammered against my ribs. Lots of work to do. The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I was in my dad's office. The room was neat, organized, a testament to my mother's meticulous housekeeping, but I wasn't looking at the surfaces, I was looking for the digital life beneath. I sat in his expensive leather chair, the one he bought after a good quarter for his consulting business, a quarter I knew for a fact had been saved by a loan from me that was never repaid. My hands trembled as I moved the mouse. I didn't have to guess his password. It was Ryan 1999, the year of my brother's birth. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. I opened his email, searching for Holloway and Finch. There it was, an email chain confirming their appointment, and attached to the final message, a password-protected PDF, Miller_will_final.pdf. My breath hitched. The password could be anything. I tried the obvious ones first: Mark and Susan. Miller family. No. My mind raced. What did they value most? What was the center of their world? With a sickening lurch of insight, I typed Ryan the best. The document opened. For a moment, I just stared, unable to process the cold black text. It was standard legal jargon, full of hereby and whereas. I scrolled down past the initial declarations to the heart of the matter, to the section titled Disposition of Property. I read it once, then a second time, a third, forcing the words to make sense. My eyes scanned the page for my own name. It was there just once, in a single brutal clause. I have intentionally made no provision in this will for my other son, Jason M. Miller, not from a lack of affection, but because I am confident in his ability to provide for himself. I trust he will understand this decision was made for the overall well-being of the family. The rest of the document was a testament to their one true investment: the house, the savings, the investment portfolios, all of it, every last penny I had helped them accumulate and protect, was bequeathed to our beloved son, Ryan P. Miller. The room began to spin. The hum of the computer fan grew to a roar in my ears. It wasn't a lack of affection, it was a complete and total negation of my existence. I wasn't a son, I was a bootstrap, and now that I had pulled them up, I was being discarded. The phrase overall well-being of the family was a euphemism for the well-being of Ryan. A cold rage, pure and sharper than any I had ever felt, sliced through the shock. This was not a wound of passion, it was a calculated, premeditated financial execution, and they had left the evidence sitting on the family computer. With shaking hands, I plugged in a thumb drive, copied the file, and then, as a final damning piece of evidence, I took a picture of the screen with my phone, the document open, the password Ryan the best still visible in a forgotten password recovery pop-up. I wiped the recent document history, cleared the browser cache, and left the office, my movements stiff and robotic. I had what I came for. That evening, I did something else I should have done years ago. I found my estranged Aunt Carol on Facebook. She was my dad's older sister, a woman spoken of only in hushed, disapproving tones at family gatherings. The official story was that she was difficult and had cut herself off. Now I suspected there was more to it. I sent her a message. Aunt Carol, it's Jason, your nephew. I know this is out of the blue, but I desperately need to talk to you about our family. She responded within the hour. We met for coffee the next day in a town halfway between my college and her home. She was a woman with my father's eyes but none of his practiced easygoing charm. Her gaze was direct, her smile sparing. She looked at me over the rim of her mug, and I saw a flicker of sad recognition. "You have that look," she said, her voice low. "The look of someone who just realized the family ledger is permanently rigged against them." I didn't have to explain. I just told her what I'd found. She listened without interruption, her expression hardening with each detail. When I finished, she let out a long, slow breath. "I'm not surprised," she said, "just disappointed that the pattern is repeating." And then she told me her story. She and my dad had an older brother, my uncle Robert. Robert was the Jason of their generation, quiet, responsible, the one who took a job right out of high school to help support the family while my father, the Ryan of his day, was given everything to pursue his dreams. The moment Robert got married and tried to set a boundary, my grandparents had cut him out, calling him selfish and ungrateful. Aunt Carol, for defending him, was ostracized. "Our family doesn't build, Jason," she said, her eyes boring into mine, filled with a 30-year-old pain. "It consumes. It identifies a workhorse and a show pony. It drains the workhorse to decorate the show pony. They don't hate you. In their twisted way, they think they're being practical. You're the safe investment that pays the bills. Ryan is the lottery ticket they're hoping will hit the jackpot. You were never meant to be a son, you were meant to be a function." Her words were brutal, but they were also liberating. They stripped away the layers of guilt and obligation I had been buried under my whole life. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't selfish. I was simply the latest cog in a dysfunctional machine. Driving back to my apartment, the world looked different. The anger was still there, but it was no longer a hot, chaotic rage. It was cold, clear, and focused. It was fuel. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to survive, I was going to show them exactly what their safe investment was capable of when it finally decided to cash out. That night, my phone rang. It was Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. His message was a perfect, clueless encapsulation of our entire relationship. "Hey, Jay. Just calling to see what's up. You've been kind of weird lately, all stressed and boring. Anyway, Mom and Dad are thinking of getting me a new laptop for graduation, a MacBook Pro. Think you could, chip in? It's an investment in my future, man." I deleted the message without a second thought. The pipeline was now closed, and the drought for them was about to begin. The first of the month came and went in silence. I paid my rent, bought a week's worth of actual groceries, chicken, vegetables, things that weren't beige and coated in salt, and ignored the gaping hole where the $600 transfer to my parents used to be. For the first time in years, the end of my bank statement didn't have a negative sign in front of it. The feeling was intoxicating, a dizzying gulp of fresh air after a decade of drowning. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. My father called first, his tone casual, a man-to-man inquiry. "Hey, son, just checking in. Must have been a glitch with the bank this month, the transfer didn't show up. You know how these systems are. Date 3. My brother and I graduated from college together, but my parents only paid for my brother's tuition. He deserved it, but you didn't. My parents came to our graduation, but their faces turned pale when they saw me receiving the valedictorian award." "Oh, weird," I replied, my voice a carefully crafted instrument of mild surprise. I was reading a chapter on thermodynamics, and the laws of entropy suddenly felt deeply personally relevant. I switched to a new account with better student benefits. I must have forgotten to set up the transfer. I'll look into it when I get a chance. "Great. Do it soon, son. Bills are bills." He hung up. There was no "how are you?" No "how are your classes?" Just a reminder of my function. A week later, the calls became more frequent, the tone shifting from casual to annoyed. Then the emotional artillery began, with my mother taking the lead. She started with guilt-laced texts, just thinking about our family and how we always support each other. Feeling so blessed. When that didn't work, she escalated. One evening, while I was in the university library surrounded by the comforting quiet of focused minds, my phone buzzed. It was a picture message from her, a photo of me from years ago, maybe 10 years old, grinning a gap-toothed smile next to Ryan at Christmas, a mountain of presents behind us. The text beneath it read, "Remember how happy we used to be? I miss my sweet, caring boy. Your father and I are so worried. Please call us." For a moment, it worked. A wave of guilt, powerful and conditioned, washed over me. My hand hovered over the call button. Was I being cruel? Was I destroying my family over money? My phone buzzed again, a text from Chloe. "Don't you dare." I looked up. She was sitting at a table across the library, watching me, a fierce protective look on her face. She must have seen me get the message, seen the conflict on my face. Her text was the jolt of electricity I needed. I took a deep breath, typed back "I won't," and turned my phone off. I looked back at the picture my mom had sent. I saw the presents and remembered that my gift that year had been a savings bond we'll keep safe for you, while Ryan had gotten the brand new Nintendo 64. The manipulation was so old, so deeply ingrained, I'd almost forgotten it was there. I channeled every ounce of my anger, my hurt, my newfound clarity into my work. My life became a monastic routine of class, lab, library, and the diner. The emotional noise from my family became a distant hum. I was forging my pain into something sharp, something strong. My mentor, Professor Albright, noticed the change. He was a kind, brilliant man with a shock of white hair and an infectious passion for material science. He called me into his office one afternoon. "Jason," he said, peering at me over his spectacles, "your work on your thesis proposal is extraordinary. It's graduate level, frankly. But you look like you haven't slept in a month. Is everything all right?" The genuine concern in his voice almost broke me. Here was a man who saw my potential and my exhaustion, a stark contrast to my family, who only saw my utility. I didn't tell him everything, but I told him enough, about the financial pressures, about having to work to put myself through school. He listened patiently, his expression growing more serious. Resilience is a virtue, Jason, he said when I finished, but the world shouldn't demand so much of it from a mind like yours. I want you to apply for the Chancellor's Fellowship for your master's. It's a full ride. It's competitive, but your grades and this thesis work, you're exactly the kind of candidate they're looking for. A fellowship. A fully funded master's. It was a lifeline I had never dared to imagine. The thought of it became my secret weapon, my light at the end of a very long, dark tunnel. The months leading up to graduation were a blur of furious work and dodged phone calls. My family, I think, had settled on the belief that I was going through a rebellious phase that would end once I was out of school and earning a real salary. They agreed to come to the joint graduation ceremony, mostly, I suspected, to celebrate Ryan's achievement. The day arrived, humid and heavy with the smell of cut grass and anticipation. My family found me outside the auditorium. They were all dressed up, a perfect picture of pride. My dad clapped Ryan on the back while my mom fussed with his gown. They barely glanced at my old, ill-fitting suit. "Jason, be a dear and get a picture of us, won't you?" my mother said, handing me her phone. I spent the next 10 minutes as their personal photographer, capturing dozens of smiling photos of the son they were proud of. I was, as always, just part of the background. Inside, we sat through the long opening remarks. My parents were restless, checking the program, waiting for Ryan's name. It was finally called. They erupted in a cheer that was embarrassingly loud, my dad letting out a whoop. They were on their feet clapping as Ryan, looking smug, walked across the stage. As soon as he was back in his seat, they began gathering their things, ready to leave. "Well, that's that," my father whispered. "Let's beat the traffic." But then the Dean of Engineering took the podium. My parents paused. "And now," the Dean's voice boomed through the auditorium, "it is my distinct honor to announce this year's College of Engineering valedictorian. This is a student who has not only achieved a perfect 4.0 GPA in our most rigorous program but has done so while working nearly full-time to support himself, a testament to brilliance and fortitude. Please join me in congratulating Mr. Jason Miller." Silence. I watched them from my seat near the stage. I saw the exact moment the name registered. My father's hand, which had been reaching for his coat, froze in mid-air. My mother's proud, beaming smile collapsed as if its strings had been cut. Ryan's smug expression dissolved into slack-jawed confusion. A camera projecting onto the large screens panned across the crowd, and for a glorious, terrible second, the image of my family's stunned, horrified faces was broadcast for the entire auditorium to see. They had gone from beaming with pride to looking like they'd been slapped. Their faces were stone. I stood up, my legs feeling strangely steady, and walked toward the stage. As I passed my family's row, I didn't look at them, but I could feel the heat of their shocked stares. I shook the dean's hand, the applause of 1,000 strangers washing over me, and stepped up to the podium. I looked out at the crowd, my eyes finding Chloe and Professor Albright, who were both beaming, their faces shining with a pride that was real and unconditional. "There are two kinds of families," I began, my voice clear and strong. "The family you are born into and the family you find. The family you are born into gives you your name, but the family you find, they are the ones who help you discover what that name is worth." I kept my speech short and focused, speaking about resilience, about the power of self-worth. Every word was chosen, a carefully polished stone aimed directly at the people in row 14. When I finished, the applause was even louder, but the dean held up a hand. "And I am thrilled to add," he announced, his voice filled with genuine excitement, "that Mr. Miller's incredible achievement and his groundbreaking thesis work have earned him this year's Chancellor's Fellowship, a full-ride scholarship for his master's degree, including a prestigious research assistantship at our partner university in California." Final update. My brother and I graduated from college together, but my parents only paid for my brother's tuition. He deserved it, but you didn't. My parents came to our graduation, but their faces turned pale when they saw me receiving the valedictorian award. California. 3,000 miles away. I chanced to look at my family. The shock had now curdled into a pale, sick horror. They hadn't just witnessed my success, they had just witnessed their primary asset, their emergency fund, their reliable son liquidating himself and preparing to launch into an orbit they could never, ever reach. The pipeline wasn't just closed, it had been demolished. The moment the ceremony ended, they descended on me like vultures. The polite applause from other families was still echoing in the hall as my father grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep, his face a thundercloud of crimson fury. "What the hell was that?" he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "You did that to embarrass us? All that garbage about found family in California?" My mother wailed, her face pale and blotchy with tears of rage, not sorrow. "What about us? What about your brother? You can't just leave." Ryan stood behind them, looking lost and bewildered, like a child who had just watched his favorite toy shatter. "A valedictorian," he mumbled, as if the concept was in a foreign language. I pulled my arm from my father's grasp, a strange calm settling over me. The fear was gone, the guilt was gone. All that was left was a vast, quiet clarity. "This conversation is not over," I said, my voice even, "but we are not having it here." I turned and walked away, joining Chloe and Professor Albright, leaving my family standing amidst the cheerful, celebrating crowd, looking like the sole survivors of a shipwreck. The true confrontation came a week later. I told them I was coming to the house to pick up the last of my things, a few boxes of old books and sentimental items I'd left in their attic. I knew it was a pretext, it was time for the final act. I walked into the living room where my sentence had been handed down 4 years earlier. They were all there waiting for me, arranged on the sofa like a tribunal. The air was thick with desperation. My mother started, her voice trembling with practiced fragility. "Jason, honey, we can talk about this. Maybe you can defer the fellowship for a year. The family needs you right now. We need to stabilize. Stabilize what? I asked, remaining standing. The finances I'm no longer propping up? My father slammed his hand on the coffee table. You listen to me. After everything we've done for you, given you, you have a responsibility to this family. You owe us. I let a beat of silence hang in the air before I responded. Oh, you? I said, my voice dangerously soft. Let's talk about what is owed. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened a file, a spreadsheet I started keeping track of a few years ago, 10 years of financial support, from my part-time high school job to my shifts at the diner. It totaled, with conservative interest, just over $78,000. That doesn't include the co-signed loans I paid off for you or the emergency cash infusions. Shall we round up to an even $100,000? They stared, speechless. I don't want it back, I continued, the words coming easily now. Consider it my severance package. But the idea that I owe you anything more ended the day I found this. I swiped to the next file, the photo I had taken of the will on my dad's computer screen. I enlarged it and set the phone down on the coffee table, right next to his hand. The color drained from my parents' faces. It was the look of thieves caught red-handed. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. My father stared at the screen, his jaw working silently. I have intentionally made no provision. For the overall well-being of the family, I quoted from memory. You made your choice. You placed your bet. You invested in Ryan. I am not here to punish you, I am here to honor the terms of your own contract. I am simply a third party you are no longer affiliated with. I looked at Ryan. He was staring at the phone, at the password Ryan the best still faintly visible in the corner. The smugness he had worn his entire life had evaporated, leaving behind something raw and terrified. I'm here to collect my things, I said, turning toward the stairs, and then I'm leaving for good. It was then that Ryan finally broke. It wasn't loud or angry, it was a quiet, desperate collapse. Wait, he said, his voice cracking. He looked from the phone to my face, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes, the fear of an abyss opening up beneath his feet. I don't know how to do any of this, he whispered, his voice thick with a shame so profound it was almost tangible. The finances, the mortgage. I don't know how any of it works. They never taught me. He wasn't talking to me, he was confessing to the universe. He was admitting that the show pony had never been taught how to walk on its own. I looked at my parents, who seemed to shrink into the sofa, their grand illusions shattered by their son's pathetic, honest confession. There was nothing left to say. I went upstairs, collected my boxes, and walked out of that house without looking back. My flight to California was the next morning. As I sat at the gate, my phone rang. It was Ryan. I almost declined, but some impulse made me answer. I put the phone to my ear and said nothing. Jason, his voice was hesitant, stripped of all its former bravado. I just wanted to say. You were right about everything. There was a long pause. I could hear his shaky breath. I'm sorry. It wasn't a magic fix. It wasn't a promise of a new, wonderful relationship. But it was something, an admission, an acknowledgement. It was the first honest sentence he had ever spoken to me. Take care of yourself, Ryan, I said, and I meant it. Then I hung up and blocked his number, along with my parents. Now, 6 months later, I'm sitting in my own apartment in California, an apartment I pay for with the stipend for my research fellowship. The air smells of salt from the nearby ocean, not stale coffee. My life is full of complex problems, particle physics and quantum mechanics, not manufactured family crises. It is quiet. It is peaceful. It is mine. I learned the hardest lesson of my life in that living room. I didn't destroy my family, I just stopped being the glue that held their fantasy together. I learned that setting a boundary isn't an act of aggression but an act of profound self-respect. Sometimes, to find the family that will build you up, you have to have the courage to leave the one that is tearing you down. It was the hardest decision of my life, but it was also the most liberating. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with the people you were supposed to trust the most? What did you discover about yourself in the process?